Great. I'm going to start introducing myself as the last few people start to log on. We are recording this session as well, so if you do have to drop off for whatever reason, we will be posting it onto our LinkedIn, so make sure you follow Transition Partners on there. So my name is Alice Chance, and I have recently moved into a diversity and inclusion role within Transition Partners. Something I've been super passionate about for a while, so this is going to be the first of a series of events around diversity and inclusion within sort of digital tech and sort of beyond that as well. I'm going to be starting a digital diversity vlog as well, so if anybody who is listening would be interested in attending or sort of joining me on there, please let me know. That's sort of going to be a bit more, I guess, personal, so the individual who joins that, but yeah, they're going to be a lot of fun. So today I have my three lovely panelists. I'm very happy to have them here with me. I'm just going to get them all to go around and do a quick introduction of themselves, sort of what they do for the community at the moment in their current role. So we'll start with Alice.
Hello, I'm Alice. My day job is tech principal at Conveyor Insurance. But I'm also one of the organisers for Queer Code Yorkshire and involved in Queer Code London and Scotland as well. And these are groups for queer developers, software engineers, anybody in IT really. And it's that safe space for people to come together and hang out, essentially. London and Scotland group have been doing some online talks recently. We've been fairly quiet during lockdown in Yorkshire, but hope to organise some events soon.
Great, thank you. And I'm glad you said about it not just being programmers, because I did think it was, so that's nice. It's kind of opened up for everyone. I've actually known of Alice for a while because they work for Conveyor, and we're very involved with Conveyor at Transition Partners, but I also found them through their Twitter, because they do a lot of stuff on there, so feel free to follow Queer Code Leads on Twitter. Next, Amy, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hello, so my name's Amy Hearn, and I'm a Digital Inclusion Coordinator on the 100% Digital Leads project, which is the city's response to digital exclusion. So we work really hard as a team to improve the diversity and inclusion across the city of the kinds of people that are able to interact with digital technologies and organisations, especially in the current pandemic situation where, of course, the reduction of face-to-face services has meant that organisations and businesses have had to respond really rapidly and change their delivery methods to be able to reach people when face-to-face isn't an option. So we've done a lot with supporting those organisations, but also supporting the individuals that they help to be able to interact with their services in that way as well. So improving basic digital skills and access for everyone across the city.
Great, thank you. Cleveland.
Hi everyone, it's an absolute pleasure to be here. And as you can see, I'm the old man of this group here. So there's a bit of diversity straight away. I say the old man, I've just actually hit my 30th anniversary in tech. That's how old I am.
Well done.
Thank you. Yeah, as I said, I entered technology 30 years ago when I first started working out of studies. I'm from Leeds, born, educated here, and initially started working here. Did what a lot of people do during the years, is travel the country, head down south to the smoke, and then return home to the motherland, which is Leeds and Yorkshire. My roles today, I have a few roles actually. So the role you often see on various Twitters and LinkedIn posts and the rest is my day job. I'm director of cloud for a company called UK Cloud, and we deliver, as it says on the tin, cloud computing from the UK. And I'm co-lead the health division for that business. I'm also a non-exec director for Leeds and York NHS Foundation Trust, which are a mental health and learning disability trust, dealing with those individuals in the Leeds and York region. And I'm also a very proud trustee of Leeds Community Foundation. And Leeds Community Foundation, if you don't know, are a grant-making organisation. And we support thousands of charities and voluntary groups, across the city, addressing inequalities and working together to help create opportunities for those that need it most. So we talk about creating a city of opportunity for all. So that's my sort of various roles, and this subject is extremely close and dear to me. So as I say, it's a pleasure to be here to be able to talk about it.
Thank you. So I said it earlier, but I'll just say it again for the people who were a little bit later onto the webinar. We have a Q&A section down at the bottom. We have a chat section down at the bottom. So feel free to put any messages in there. Use the Q&A section, and I'll be keeping an eye on that to ask the lovely panelists. So we have some pre-submitted questions as well. So we're going to start with these. The panelists are going to sort of answer them as and when and what they'll feel comfortable speaking about. We'll go in the order that we introduced ourselves in. So our first question is, what does diversity and inclusion mean to you? Which I think is a great question.
This is the problem with having a lower ranked alphabetical name. Yeah, so diversity and inclusion, I think we're talking about this the wrong way around. It needs to be inclusion and diversity, because you can't get diverse groups without being inclusive. And for me, it's very much about making your spaces safe, welcoming, and accessible to all. And once you've got that, enabling the inclusivity, then you start getting to the diversity.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And we had a little bit of a discussion about this beforehand, about sort of the questions that we've got are very diversity based, and Alice had mentioned that, you know, inclusion is what leads to diversity in the first place. So I really like that sort of point of view, and it's already changed my thinking. So Amy, I don't know if you have anything to add on to that.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything that Alice has said, but I also think as well as having an inclusive space and a safe space for everybody and everything like that, celebrating diversity and understanding that having different people in the room with different skills and different life experiences and different outlooks and knowledge of how people are going to interact with things and accept things and see things is all really, really valuable to especially in the tech industry, when it comes to something like creating a product that people are going to be able to interact with and see as relevant to themselves and something that belongs to them. I think one of the things that we have found a lot with digital is that people that don't have basic digital skills or don't interact with digital to a basic kind of level that everyone in this chat now would take for granted, those people often don't engage with that stuff because they don't see themselves as a digital person. And I think while we're only including people that do see themselves as digital people in that discussion and in that design process, then we're never going to make something or create something that's going to be used more widely and useful to people that deserve to have those benefits as well as you and I.
Yeah, definitely. I know when we first spoke in, we spoke about the sort of digital inclusion, and again, it's like one of those topics. I think we're all slightly ignorant to, sort of like, especially when it comes to like people returning to work and things like that, trying to get themselves into a different job and trying to sort of move up the career ladder, and they don't have those digital experiences. But yeah, that's sort of limiting them. But yeah, I completely agree.
That's it. And I think, oh sorry, I was going to say one more thing.
Oh, it's okay.
I think it's got to come. I think it's got to come from both sides. So I think it's really natural for people to sort of gravitate towards people that seem like them and look like them and have sort of shared experience with them and that kind of thing. So celebrating that difference and acknowledging it and recognizing how important it is and being really mindful of being accepting of that, you know, sort of trying to push against your natural feeling warmth towards somebody that reflects back what you're giving out.
Yeah, definitely.
It's really important. It's got to be an active thing as well as just accepting difference. It's got to be an active thing for me.
Yeah, definitely agree. Cleveland, anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, hey, for me, you know, diversity means different. And inclusion means the ability to include the difference. You know, simple as that, really. You know, whatever that difference is, you know, race, colour, gender, sexuality, characteristic, you know, how do we include all as the norm, not the exception? I've always said, you know, we've tackled it when we're no longer talking about it, because it's just how it is. And for me, it's something, you know, that's where we've got to get to. And as an old man, you know, I'm going to quote good old Martin Luther King, you know, and one of the things he said how many years ago, you know, I have a dream that my children will one day live in a nation where they will be not judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. And for me, that's what diversity and inclusion is in a nutshell. You know, the content of individual characters bringing individual value because of who they are, not how they are seen or otherwise. And, you know, the great man said that back in the 60s, even before I was born, you know, and we're still talking about it now because it's not being dealt with, it's not being actioned. And this is our time, I think. This is why it's so important for us to get with the program, stop the lip service, and let's do something about it.
We need to keep the momentum rolling. I feel like we sometimes have these peaks and like spikes in history where things look like they're going to change and then it just slowly drifts away. And yeah, I think that's why sort of, for me, I was so passionate about starting this because we're in a time where we can really make change. There's a lot of time to be making change. So had some great comments just on sort of what we've just spoke about. So Natasha has said that inclusion means that you can be yourself and you're valued for it in your environment, which I completely agree with. James has also said inclusion needs to come first. Attracting diversity is possible, however, it's a false economy without committed and robust inclusive strategies and processes. And then Jude has said, for many, it's harder to be inclusive than it is to be diverse. Diversity is being invited to the party, inclusion is being asked to dance, which is very nice. Well, nicely put, but yeah, I completely agree as well. So our next question is, what value do you think diversity brings to the workplace? Which for me is a big question and something I've been doing a lot of thinking about recently. And I think, yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing what you guys have got to say.
Go to Stein.
You can start, Cleveland.
What does the value diversity brings to the workplace? I think, you know, if you look at, in particular, around services, for me, you know, I keep talking about the content of our individual characters and who we are and who we serve and who we're dealing with. I think for me, without having that diversity in the workplace, it's very difficult to represent the people that you're meant to be delivering to. You know, how do you understand the requirements of the individuals if the individuals that are serving are just the same, just one mode, you know, not being adverse, and you know, in particular in some of the things that we do in public services, you know, for me, when you look at mental health and you look at learning disabilities, if it's just a single type of individual that is meant to be representing and understanding those people about those services, how can you really understand and therefore affect and deliver appropriately? And that's why you've got to have diverse in the workplace, in everything we do as a norm. You know, how many of us have been in rooms where we look around and the diversity element is weak, to put it bluntly. So yeah, that's for me, that's the value. The individual characters bring individual strengths, and that's what we've got to use.
Yeah, I agree. Amy, have you got anything to add on that?
Yeah, so I completely agree with everything Cleveland said, and to sort of add to that and just illustrate that, I think making sure that stuff that's designed actually works and works for everybody. So Cleveland mentioned people with learning disabilities, and we've done quite a lot of work around supporting people with learning disabilities to be able to make the most out of digital and using some different kinds of tools for interacting with digital, stuff like voice assisted technology, which should help people that maybe have got lower literacy levels potentially to be able to, you know, use search engines and you know, input text into a document or something. But voice assistive technology, as you probably all know, is so rubbish if you don't sound like the people who designed and tested it. And that's purely because of the limited kind of voice of people that design and test the stuff. So if you've got a learning disability and you speak a bit differently, or any of the other reasons why you might be using something like that to be able to help you interact with something rather than typing. So, you know, people that have maybe got English as an additional language, older people, people with dementia, all those kinds of things. We've managed to get around it and it is useful, but it would be so much more useful if the technology recognised a wide range of voices and accents and intonation. And I do think that that is almost completely down to who's designing it and who's testing it. I think other things around, you know, things having the right level of functionality to be able to support the needs of different types of people. So like we were saying about, you know, making something relevant to people and to the audience. You know, the things like some of the first health trackers on phones and stuff had no ability for women or people who menstruate to be able to record their periods, which is something that so many people, that almost everyone that I know that menstruates uses something like that. And it's probably one of the only thing apart from the step counter that actually do use to be able to track health. And so that something so obvious would be missed out as an application is again completely around who is designing that stuff and who is thinking, because we can only include stuff that we know about. I think it's as simple as that, and stuff that we can think about. And if you've got different voices, different needs and different understandings all feeding in, then it's so much easier rather than trying to design something and, like Cleveland was saying, guess people's needs.
Yeah, completely. Thank you. Have you got anything to add to that, Alice?
And just to add slightly to what Amy was talking about, that we all have different risk profiles as well. And that having a more diverse workforce, more diverse group of people working on your products, understand better how your products could be used for harm and try and avoid that happening.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I was doing a bit of reading and sort of as well, beyond all of this, sort of from a business perspective, having a diverse workforce, you know, just adds to your business. Otherwise you kind of stagnate your creativity. If you're bringing in the same people over and over again, the same personalities, the same sort of race, culture, you're going to have the same business, and I don't think you're ever going to grow. You're never going to grow as a company. You're never going to go to where you want to go to, because it's just going to be the same thing over and over again. New people, new ideas. I think it's super important. And we've had some really good comments on the sides. The comments are pretty popping right now, guys. So I'll just read a couple of them. Quinn support, a big agree from me to Alice's point about diversity, sort of helping to understand risk profiles, definitely. And we've had one here, is money and sustainability is the bottom line. If you want your business to survive, you've got to represent your customer base. As Cleveland mentioned, your company won't survive, particularly in times like now, and you need to diversify your thinking and quickly. Susan has also said, create inclusion with simple mindfulness and what others might have a different reality from your own, which I completely sort of agree with that point. So moving on to our next question, which is quite a big one. I
was just going to say, one thing I was just going to say in comment, there's some great comments, but I was going to say, have a look at the non-diversity. If it's still available, the picture of the Blockbuster board is all I'm going to say. Before Netflix goes along.
I'll share that on the Transition Partners page after this, so okay, everyone can see that. So this next question is quite a big one, and I guess it's one that's going to be, diversity and inclusion is constantly learning. And this question is, what have you witnessed being done within businesses, so businesses you've worked for in the past, or things you've seen online that have sort of improved diversity? So Amy, I don't know if you want to start with this one.
Sure. So I think one of the things that we've seen at the moment, so slightly different to making a more diverse business workforce maybe, but I think the pandemic has really brought to light some of the different needs and pressures that are on different groups to be able to interact with digital and interact with services and things like that. So we've seen a couple of really big local reports recently. So we've seen in the last couple of days, Women's Lives Leeds have released a report on the impact on COVID to the lives of women, and just highlighting some of those additional barriers and responsibilities and things that just make life more difficult, or often make life more difficult for women. And looking at stuff like, you know, for me, so I live with my husband. I don't have any children or anything like that. I don't have any pets. I've got no distractions. Working from home has been fantastic. It's been wonderful because it means that I can work in my own time, and, you know, I can like stop and start cooking if I want, or do whatever I want. But for a lot of people, we've seen that, you know, having to manage childcare, having to manage care of elderly parents, having to manage the household generally, you know, having additional responsibilities of having to go and buy shopping for all sorts of different people that are shielding and things like that. And that often invariably falls to women. And I think that it's something that was known, or there's an idea of, but I think it's really good that we're seeing proper studies and are trying to understand the different things that different groups are going through. There's been a really interesting report recently as well from Healthwatch about the changes to the NHS and healthcare, and all of the in the phase of reduction of face-to-face services, you know, moving towards people being able to do their health consultations online. And that's meant that there's been a massive increase in health inequalities because, yeah, for a lot of people it seems, and for me it seems like something that's really convenient and a lot easier, and I don't have to go down to a doctor's surgery and, you know, all of that. But I've got equipment, I've got Wi-Fi, I've got skills, I've got privacy, you know, and these are all things that I think have not been properly understood. So I think it's really good that organisations and the city is taking a really positive step in really going out of the way to find out about the different needs of different groups. And I think that's all about reducing and helping overcome those barriers, and will in turn lead to a more inclusive city in general and the businesses within it.
Yeah, I'd agree with that completely. I think there's been some interesting, shall I say, progression. You know, I think in what I've seen in the workplace and in industry, most recently, over the last few years, I've seen a greater focus and action around gender diversity, you know, really seeing some, and it's been great to see the workplace becoming much more gender diverse. I mean, technology as a whole, as traditionally in the past been very male-driven, male-dominated. And there's work to be done, a lot of work to be done. I mean, I've got a daughter who's just about to do her GCSEs, and I went to their school while they were talking to them about various subjects and careers. And some of the subjects and careers were really, really enlightening and, you know, uplifting and the rest. And some of them, in particular, my own industry, technology, was as dull as dishwater. No wonder you only get a group of people that continue to go into that mode.
I thought tech was like the weirdest thing ever when I was at school. I was like, Excel sheet, no thanks. I literally thought IT and technology was Excel sheets, and I was, you know what I mean, I'm 27, so it wasn't that long ago.
Exactly. So, you know, so I've seen some greater focus, in particular, as I said, on gender diversity. I think, just like Amy said, I think this pandemic has shone a light on greater diversity, and really, you know, you look across, it's brought out what's out there, and I think, you know, for me, he's now using that as a positive and actually building on the diversity that we've seen that's out there. That's been, the light's been shone on both negative and positively. and then using that as the bedrock for going forward. So yes, I've seen changes. Still a long way to go.
Great. Anything to add to that, Alice?
I think to bring it back to the question about what businesses can do individually, it's very much listening to your individuals. The people with the lived experiences in your company are the ones to listen to, and just give them the power to spend money on cultural events and start the discussions.
Definitely. So I think we had a question come through on the Q&As about sort of, it's Gordon from Maztec, and he was just saying about how, according to a study by PwC, men are 5 times more likely and active to pursue a career in tech than women. So a lot of the time, temptation for businesses to try and solve that with sort of recruitment targets. But how do we get that diverse group of people in the door in the first place, I think is what we need to tackle. And I know from things that I've read about it, it's sort of, yeah, it's showing, and we've mentioned it earlier, showing different faces, showing different representations within a business. I was looking at companies earlier, just doing a bit of work, and every single thing I was seeing was the same picture of an old white man with grey hair and a suit. And I was like, I wouldn't want to apply for a job at this role, because everyone in this company seems like an old man. I don't want to come and work here. I want to come and work because a company that shows diversity, celebrates diversity. So it's, you know, Christmas parties. What about everything else? What about all the other holidays that people celebrate? It's getting people more involved. I don't know if anyone else has anything to add onto that as well.
I think there's lots of great work companies are doing about encouraging people, more diverse groups to join their companies. There are quite a lot of companies starting to advertise better now with the more diverse work groups, the pictures of the actual people who work there. But it's also about keeping people there, because if you're going to go on a big advertising campaign and say, look, we're all really diverse, we're all really inclusive,
yeah.
People arrive and you actually aren't, they're going to leave again.
Yeah, I agree. So next question is, what sort of positive changes, a few people have been asking this as well, and it's quite similar, I guess, to what we've said before, but what sort of positive changes do you think businesses can really put into place to attract a diverse workforce? What do you think are the next steps we need to start be making are? I don't know who would like to start.
You know, the positive actions, and, you know, there's a couple of comments that have been said on there. There's you know, and questions are all in this place. You know, I think as I just mentioned as well, and we've all said, you know, there's been some really good work that's done with gender diversity, and that's really positive. There's a how can we expand that across the many other diverse areas and characteristics to really encourage that. But there's also, you know, there's some interesting challenges, isn't there? There's interesting things. I mean, one of the courses, and, you know, I've done a lot of courses over the years, but one of the courses I did that even opened my eyes was around unconscious biases, you know, and just that learned experience, learned behaviors that is so unconscious that, you know, needs to be understood and then worked forward going there. So, you know, you look at everything from recruitment, and why do people always look the same when they recruit? Because people recruit in their own mode, and, you know, all those things which are just the way it is. You know, if they like me, then they're going to be brilliant out there. You know, if they like something else, then they're not. But that trying to break down those barriers is what is some of the real key actions I think we need to take right at the start. It's not going to happen overnight. This is a long term, you know, a decade of more hard work. Things like I've seen, in particular at the charity, where we now do blind recruitment, you know, all those individual characteristics or things that you could identify are stripped out.
Okay, so from the CV then, or correct. How are you doing that? Yeah, so from the CV.
So we have a process where the individual applications come through, and all those characteristics that would do identification are stripped out from an individual, not the recruiting person, so that when they get them, they get the pure information. And one thing I've always said is what's really important is I'm not into quotas or anything like that. The right person needs to get the right job, but we've got to get rid of those things that allow us to go into the mode of the unconscious bias of where they've been educated, what you know, and all the different characteristics that you can see generally in a CV or an application, because that's the only way we're going to be, one of the only way I think we're going to be able to actually do this consciously, and not be veered by our learned behaviours, our understanding, our background, or whatever it may be. So there's lots of positive steps that can be made. I think we've got to get this really pushing forward. We've got to, you know, as Ali said, about educating, understanding, and moving forward from there, and discussing it openly, safely, without it being, it shouldn't be an uncomfortable conversation at all.
No, I think there's so many words that people are afraid of. I think thinking that you've got unconscious biases, we all have them, but we need to learn from them and accept it and move on. There's so many things at the moment that people aren't accepting, that we all have, sort of these microaggressions, everything like that. We've all unfortunately got them, because that's just the way we are. But we have to learn from it, accept it, and move on. And it's not a negative thing, but we have to keep going with it. We've got some quite good comments on here as well. So we've got unconscious bias exists. There is a lot of training out there, but it only works when the individual takes accountability for their biases, which I completely, I really agree with that, Jude. Quinn's actually just said about sort of the blind recruitment, that it can amplify the white middle class male candidates because they have had more opportunities in the past, and those opportunities will still be reflected on their CV, which I guess I agree with as well. I guess it's getting that, it's how do you get the right people, different people applying for the role in the first place, which I think it's Laura who said up here that companies need to understand if they look in the same places, they will attract the same people. Karen Blackett, OBE, recently suggested that seeking out overachievers in poor performing schools and marginalised communities is one positive step forward. And I actually heard you speaking about this sort of thing before, Cleveland, and after that did like a bit of reading into it and really agree with what Laura said there. Christy has also sent a link round. This site is good if you're interested in testing your unconscious bias, so I'll make sure I get that posted as well for everybody to have a look at. Okay, has anybody else got any sort of opinions on this one they'd like to add in?
You're on mute.
Amy, you're on mute.
Well, here we go. Sorry about that. Yeah, what was I saying? Yeah, what somebody said in the chat there, I think, about recognising that not everybody has the same access to opportunities. So especially when it comes to people from maybe less well-off backgrounds, you know, people that don't know, lots of people whose parents work in lots of industries don't know what kinds of jobs there are. I'm from quite a poor background, and everybody that I knew from Hull basically worked on the fish docks, and I didn't know anybody that worked in tech or anything like that. So I think it goes to what you were saying as well about, you know, you then associate those kinds of jobs with a certain kind of people, with a certain kind of skill set. And I think there's a lot to be done, a lot more to be done around helping people. So from both sides, so helping people and young people when they're making their choices about what they're going to study and everything, understand that there are a variety of different skills that are needed and celebrated in tech industries. And like you're saying, it's not all about being able to use Excel and stuff like that. You know, there's a lot of skills that are sort of celebrated for being maybe more feminine, or that people that identify as having feminine traits might see in themselves, but not necessarily see as being something that's linked to tech. So, you know, like being creative and design and stuff like that. So I think a lot, and it's brilliant to see the stuff that's going on with code clubs and coder dojos and things like that within libraries in the city and elsewhere. around making obvious links with creativity and tech, and encouraging you know, play and making, and trying and being able to help people see themselves in those kinds of roles. But I think there's more that businesses can do to be able to support that kind of activity. And I know that some of the activity that does happen is sponsored by businesses and all that kind of thing. But at the moment, you know, Leeds has got so many, such a massive tech industry, so many businesses, and there's such a massive skills shortage already, and that is only going to grow. So being able to give a relatively small amount of money to organisations that are encouraging those kinds of skills in our local people in Leeds, I think is really, really important. And I think it's interesting what one of the comments said about seeking out overachievers in poor performing schools. I think that's great, and finding the clever kids is always going to be something that we do, but everybody's fighting for those kids. You know, should we not be doing more to try and get some of the other kids that maybe haven't excelled at school in a difficult situation but have still got lots to give, and are maybe going to develop their skills differently and later in life, and things like that. So yeah, just also in the recruitment process, if we keep looking for certain types of experience and certain types of opportunities on there around, you know, what sort of university people went to, or, you know, what sort of first jobs they've had, or internships, or all that kind of thing, we're only going to get a certain kind of people, and people that have got those opportunities open to them. So I think it needs to come from both the skills development stuff and from the other side as well.
Yeah, I definitely think what we've all sort of spoke about then, in like sort of the younger education, and making people aware that there are different roles and there are different people that do them, and it isn't one set role for one person, and it isn't the nuclear family like it used to be. We live in a different world now, and we need to change our thought processes. And the more I sort of learn about this, the education is so key to everything, really.
I think, Amy, you make a really good point about, you know, the schools. I think we do need to get into schools. So, you know, I'm a great living example. 30 years in tech, been very successful in it, so feel lucky. But I know it was hard work. But I'm an example that it doesn't actually take a rocket scientist to be in tech. I think we've got to demystify that tech is this, you know, super high education level of you need to have that base to be successful. That's rubbish. I didn't go to university. I've done okay, and I think I was brought up in the city of Leeds. You know, I think we and the business community have got to get out there a bit more. We've got to actually go into those arenas which are not the norm, not the careers fair, and not the ones where we're trying to cream off the latest university students. And all. We've got to, because actually within those groups, those million plus individuals that are not got the spotlight, that not got the opportunities, there are many, many nuggets of future leaders and people that will do us proud if they're given the opportunity, because they won't get it naturally. So we've got to get out there.
I think with adults as well. So I think there's a lot to be done with kids and young people, and I think it's fantastic. There's obviously loads of stuff that's already happening, like I say, with co-clubs and, you know, a head partnership and all that, trying to bring, you know, STEM ambassadors and stuff, trying to be able to get the tech industries and STEM industries into school. But also there's really good initiatives around supporting adults that maybe haven't had the same opportunities and don't see themselves as techie kind of people. So, you know, like Sky have got their academy sort of boot camp for women in particular, to be able to, I don't have a tech background, to be able to learn some of the basic skills really, really quickly. And I think it's that attitude of, in the recruitment process as well, recognizing that those people, yeah, maybe they can't code, maybe they don't know much about digital stuff, but they've got loads of other qualities that are needed, and that actually you can teach people how to code, and they can teach people in a few months. So that's all.
I tried to learn. You couldn't teach me. I just say that. I'm finding what I'm doing for now, but it was, I could see I was just, because first that time I went, because I did the Code First Girls, the first session I went to, I was just like, oh, I'm never going to be able to do this. But after I understood, and I'm sure everyone stuck it out, and I had the time that I could have put into it, which unfortunately I didn't have. I would have been able to do it, but I never in a million years thought I could have done that. I never ever thought that I could even been given that opportunity to even do something like that. As a woman that's, again, not been to university, just sort of worked in service jobs, then going to recruitment. I never thought I could then maybe go into coding or go into something else. And it's just having that whole sort of believing in yourself mentality, and having supportive people around you and the network around you to make you know that there are other opportunities out there. We've had some comments which I haven't been keeping up with. So in a recent, this is from Gordon Maztek, he said in a recent large-scale hiring program, one of the things they tried was a way to describe the outcomes that we were trying to achieve in the program and what you might end up doing in a few years, rather than describing a type of person we were looking for, which I really like the thought of that. And I've done this before. I've hired people into the business, and that I've thought they're going to get on really well with that person. I'm going to really push them to get the job, because that's what I thought recruitment was. You want to hire in, and I think that doing things like that, not looking at universities, just looking at really previous experience sort of, and whether they have the sort of tenacity to go into something else, whether they've got that drive to do something else. Christy has also said STEM do lots of work with schools, and that if there's anyone who is listening and interested, they would be happy for digital community ambassadors to join as well. So that's, yeah, have a look into STEM if you don't already know what STEM is. It's pretty cool. I've also got businesses are definitely missing out by not going into communities to look out for the nuggets like Cleveland was talking about. So yeah, I really agree with that. Okay, I've got a couple more questions. I've got one more question, and then we'll go to the questions which we have been sent in throughout, which I haven't already asked. So this is a bit of a broad one, but for a business or for somebody that's sort of starting to open it out, what advice would you give for a company or a person who is wanting to get started with diversity and inclusion? I don't know, whoever would like to start. Me?
So
I'll start. Alice, here we go. Thank you.
I've kind of touched on this previously, but it's, yeah, the best way is making the money available for your people who care about this within the company already. Give them the opportunity to actually start organising. Self-organising groups within the business goes a long way, and primarily to that inclusivity and accessibility more than the diversity initially, I guess. But yeah, that's where I would start.
I would say from my experience, and sort of stepping into this diversity and inclusion role, that where I'm starting is just reading, learning, listening, speaking to people. So I've been in this role now for 5 weeks, and I speak to so many different people every day. And I just learn from the people around me, and that's kind of becoming one of the key things. But there's also obviously lots of there's amazing people out there that can come into your businesses that can speak to you about diversity. They can give you diversity training. Your managers need to be trained on diversity. There's a lot of education and just sort of giving that representation to other people. I read something recently on LinkedIn, because there's all those things nowadays like International Cat Day and international this, international that, and they suggested instead of celebrating them all, why don't you get certain people from the business to put forward one day that they'd like to celebrate, which I think is a nice idea. Start having that diversity. So obviously a lot of businesses are already doing Pride and things like that. So I guess, yeah, keeping up with that sort of thing. I don't know if anyone has anything else to add on that one, or we'll move on to the questions which have been submitted.
I'll just add and just say I support exactly that. I think it starts with learning. It starts with understanding and learning from people and from individual characters. You know, one of the things that Leeds and York NHS Trust has started doing more widely is allowing different characters to give a bit of a blog, give a bit of an understanding of their experience in the world, you know, what it's like for them, both positively and negatively. So I think, you know, for me, it starts with learning. It starts, as you say, you know, starts with understanding what it is, what it means, and how it is for individuals. And then I think, you know, once you've built that foundation of information, only then can you go, okay, what are we going to do about it? You know, not just we are diverse and inclusive, but what are you going to actually do with that, understanding the impact, positive and negative, of those individual characters. So I keep talking about, and really, you know, moving it from there. So I'll start with learning, get an understanding, build on from there.
Completely.
I think just to echo what has been said, really, I think totally I agree with listening to people. I think every organisation has got some levels of diversity, like as Alice was saying, you know, if people aren't able to express that, then why not? What is it about your organisation that means that they're not able to? And what is it about your organisation and the way it's set up that's maybe making life a little bit harder for people that have got additional needs in some way, you know? And that could be something from childcare to dealing with a disability to being able to be themselves in the space within the workspace or whatever. Listening to that, encouraging people to talk about it, knowing that when somebody says something that they need or that would make their life easier, that changes will actually be made, and again, celebrating that as well, and giving people that might not have it the opportunity to stand at the front as well, and to be able to be seen and to be able to be heard. And I think if all of those things are happening, then naturally you will become a more diverse workforce, because the organisation will be more attractive to and more easy for all sorts of different people to be able to be part of it.
Definitely. So we have 2 questions left that we've been sent in, and then we'll get this all wrapped up. So the first one's from Becky. It's quite a hard question, I know, for people to answer, but I guess if anyone has any thoughts on it, let's just see what they have to say. So when it comes to recruitment, what can we be doing to not only appeal to the diverse community, but also to make sure that they're fully inclusive? So I think we've spoke quite a lot about this, about what we can do as businesses, like you've said, Alice, sort of spending the money on process and sort of onto these different groups, sort of raising awareness and spending more time. I don't know if anyone has anything they'd want to add on to that, or
I'll add something around, so again, the reduction in face-to-face stuff. So, you know, there's a big move. Obviously, all interviews pretty much at the moment are now all done over something like Zoom, like this. And I think it's things like that people are expected to be able to do in a certain way, and sort of seem professional and things like that. And also things like the clothes that people wear. And, you know, there's a brilliant organisation that I can't remember the name of, that basically it's run by a tech company as well, I'm sure it is, that basically sponsors women to be able to have a new set of clothes. Yeah, that's it, SmartWorks, yeah, which I think is really, really important but it's things like that we could just you wouldn't have to have those organisations if we just understood that not everybody has a freshly pressed suit that fits, you know. If we changed our expectations, then you wouldn't need to have charities that support that. But, you know, there are so many people that don't have access to digital tech at home at the moment, that can't afford Wi-Fi, that are relying on libraries that are no longer open and stuff like that. So at the moment, those people just can't be interviewed for jobs at all, because they just don't have that. So I mean, I'm putting a problem out there and not putting a solution in place, because I don't know what else we would do. But even just
it's something to think about. Definitely mindfulness and thinking about that access that other people don't have. And definitely SmartWorks, they're an amazing charity. They have actually opened up one in Leeds recently, but like you said, just having access to clean clothes and things like that, people don't. Would I have thought about that 2 years ago? No, I'd have been like, I need to be dressed like this, but I'm lucky enough to do so. but it's owning our ignorance and learning from it. And I think that's something that's so important. And our last question, which is from Quinn.
I was just going to say, I agree with that. I think it's multifaceted in recruitment. One is, you know, how do I present myself or able to present myself in an interview scenario? And we've got to stop this, you know, expecting someone to turn up looking, you know, as though they're a CNA model. Oh gosh, a lot of old young, you won't even know what CNA is. But you know, that's sort of.
I think my Abercrombie and Fitch. I was like, what's CNA?
Exactly. It's a very, very quite tacky shop many years ago. Anyway,
I like the sound of it.
but you know, importantly about the expectations of how someone will turn up to an interview, and we've got to be careful and break that old mold. I actually really like the point that is it Gordon that from Mastec made about the hiring, about the outcome, looking at the non-obvious. I actually think that's a really, really good route in how we need to amend recruitment in order to recruit greater diversity in the makeup and the individuals. And you know, like a lot of things, we talk about everything being reinvented, you know, in the new world. I think recruitment's got to be reinvented in the way it operates, and that will allow us to be much more appealing, as well as ensuring that we're driving.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, completely agree with you. I guess which is one of the main things that me stepping into this new role and being diversity inclusive focused is I want to sort of be going into businesses and helping them, and also I want to work with businesses that want to be like that. So many businesses say we want to be diverse and inclusive, but yeah, the more you learn, the more they don't. And the final question from Quinn, which is something which I've read about a lot, is all about sort of microaggressions, where well-meaning people in the workplace end up causing distress for people by accidentally propagating stereotypes about people different to them. I think with this one, the first thing to do, and I actually spoke to Quinn yesterday on the phone, and is be upfront and honest with somebody. If you don't understand something about them, ask them. If you don't know something about somebody, ask them. Don't be afraid to ask a question. Don't be afraid to ask somebody. You know, I'm quite comfortable. I'm very extroverted, so it's very different for me, but I feel comfortable asking people questions about themselves and about their lives. If you're saying it in a nice way, I'd rather ask somebody, how do I pronounce your name, and say it wrong 1,000 times, and yeah, and that's it. And they just imagine having to do that and trying to fit into that as your sort of place of work. I think asking people, Christy's put stay curious. Yeah, ask people questions. People want to tell you their story, and that's it. That's all my opinion on that one.
I think you make a really good point actually there, and it's a real difficult one. I totally get the microaggression and, you know, behaviors and how can that be seen. I think we've got to get comfortable in being uncomfortable. If someone says something, we've got to be comfortable in a non-offensive and not be offensive to go, didn't like that.
Yeah, definitely.
That's not good. Have you thought about what you know, actually be able to say that without causing offense or feeling as though you're going to cause offense. You know, you look at a lot of things, behaviors, things that are said, and a lot of us collectively have historically gone, didn't really like that, but I'm not going to say anything about it, you know. And we got to stop that now. We got to be able to comfortably state when it's not.
And I think there's this whole problem at the moment where people are saying things about like cancel culture, which now people are being scared to call things out because then they think, oh, I'm going to be cancelled. But there's a difference in it's cancel culture or call out culture, and calling things out and being open. And if you yourself isn't comfortable saying something, hopefully there's someone in a business where you can speak to them and say, I wasn't comfortable with this person and what they said. Could you please educate them about this? Could you please speak to them about this? And I hope that every sort of business has somebody that is able to do so in that manner.
And I think it's got to be both ways though. You've got to be willing to stand up and say something, but you've also got to be willing to accept that criticism and not criticism, that different way of thought, and to not straight away jump to a defensive of, you know, what do you mean? I'm a work person. You know, and get really defensive and funny about it, and then make it more about. I've seen people be called out for things, and then the person that's done the called out has ended up apologising to the other person because, you know, the other person's got so defensive and so upset about the fact that they've been called out on something. And you know, it's the wrong way around. I think we make mistakes. We're all learning. Hopefully, we're all learning. We're all trying all the time. And in order for people to feel comfortable with saying, I'd rather you didn't say that, or my name's pronounced this way, or actually, you know, these are my pronouns, or whatever. You've got to be the kind of person that is going to encourage that, and that people are going to be okay saying that too. Because it's not, you know, people make mistakes, and if you can just quickly change it, learn from it, and be like, thank you, oh yeah, thank you, you know. I know exactly what you mean about, I've worked with different partners that I've, you know, there's a lady recently that I only recently found out that I've been mispronouncing her name for honestly about 2 years, and that's just because
I did the same when I was at school.
She just wouldn't it's easier
feel
for her to just go with it. And I was devastated. But then you just have to start pronouncing it correctly. But
and learning and moving on, and just learn and move on, definitely. I don't know if anybody else has anything to add.
I think it's about having the company culture as well to support being able to challenge those microaggressions and limiting them. Certain companies just seem to have it right. I don't quite know how to put my finger on what is right about them, but some companies just seem a lot better than others there.
Yeah, definitely. I think education and sharing things around. I don't know, I work in not a large company, there's 14, 15 of us, but things I'm learning at the moment, I'm trying to share around with people in the team, and I think maybe that could be a good thing going forward, is sharing new things around with people. So especially in regards to sort of pronouns, trans, inclusive language, sort of anything like that, I think is really important. And just to make sure if we're labeling somebody, we're labeling them correctly. But they were all the questions. So I don't know if anybody else has anything to say today, because we've all said a lot. No? Fantastic. Well, thank you everyone so much for joining us. Thank you so much to everyone for taking part. Really, really appreciate it. And this, like I said, is going to be a first of a series of these sort of events. So sign up to the Transition Partners LinkedIn page, because we post everything on there. Add me on LinkedIn. All the speakers' details are on my LinkedIn as well. So thank you very much to Alice, Amy in Cleveland, and hopefully we'll see you all again soon. Thank you, everyone. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.